And welcome back, everyone, to Zanpakuto Creation Series. This one comes to us from Daniel F., who asked the question, what is Cad Bane's Zanpakuto? I'm trying to do the live-action version of him, which, I was never a big Clone Wars guy, but I did know who Cad Bane was. So when we saw him in Book of Boba Fett, which, by the way, it's implied he's actually still alive at the end of that. If you notice, he's got like a chest piece that shows his vitals. That chest piece doesn't actually, it's still blinking. He's in a critical state, but he's not dead at the end of that series. So Cad Bane could actually still be alive in the current Disney Plus verse, if you will. The Mandalorian between Jedi and Force Awakens verse timeline. He's probably long dead by the time of Force Awakens, but still, honestly, Boba Fett's probably dead. Well, Boba Fett would be in his 50s at this point, I think. Would Boba Fett? Tamora Morrison's, I believe, like going into getting close to his 60s, or if he's not, he's already in his 60s. But how old is Boba Fett canonically at this point in time? Because this is like 6 or 7 years after Return of the Jedi, if I'm not mistaken. And Boba was actually like a 12-year-old in Clone Wars. No, yeah, Boba is at least in his 50s at this point. Which means by the time Force Awakens, he'd be in his going into, I think, his late 70s, early 80s. So yeah, I think Boba's almost certainly dead by the time of Force Awakens. Although who knows? We don't see a lot of old Mandalorians, but to be fair, we don't see Mandalorians' faces very often to begin with. I digress, though. So the question is, what would be the Zanpakuto for a character like that? A character who's morally ambiguous, who's basically the hired gun for help, who doesn't like you, who's a Jedi killer. He's a Jedi killer. Kill the Jedi. And he's just kind of, he also honors contracts, all that. So he's not like without a certain code of honor. When he met Marshall, he gave him an opportunity. But he's like, all right, we're going to do this then. And then he shot him. He didn't shoot him dead either. He shot him, I believe, in his hand. His trigger hand, if I'm not mistaken. So, what kind of Zanpakuto would you have for a character like this? First and foremost, what type of Zanpakuto? And I mean, what style of sword? Even though how I list it, it goes the type, the sealed state, so forth and so on. But no, I think this is a standard katana, like most. It is kind of a Keto type, but I guess by all accounts, this is a Keto type. Yeah. Its release command would be hit your target, and its name is Itinome, or Marksman's Eye. At least that's how it translated with it, Google Translate. Its Bankai is I wrote down the actual name. I have it, Ite Shoto Warume, or Marksman's one-shot evil eye, something along those lines. It translated out roughly speaking to evil eye of the marks, or a one-shot evil eye, or something like that. What the spirit of this Zanpakuto, that one I couldn't really grasp exactly. I could see it looking similar to him, his species. I could also see it being kind of like a multi-eyed creature of some kind, because that would lean perfectly into what the Shikai actually is. The inspiration I kind of took from this was, Jirobo from Squad 7, I believe it was. The guy who ended up fighting Uryu and Orihime when they first came out in the Soul Society, or showed up in the Soul Society. 1 second here. Shinigami, that's who I need. But yeah, the inspiration came from his Zanpakuto, which as soon as I can find it. Where was the damn thing? Oh, there it is. Jirobo Ikanzaka, who is actually, I believe, related to Jidambo, if I'm not mistaken. He's the younger brother of Jidambo. His Zanpakuto, which is Where is that damn thing? Oh yeah. Sunu Sunozaki Garasu, which I believe is flapping crows. Um, Splitting crows. Sorry, splitting crows. The idea came from that where when he releases his Zanpakuto, the blade disappears and he creates these flying, whirling blades. And it's dozens upon dozens of them. And he can even resheath the sword and just bring out more of them. Here, I think, what I like is the idea of him releasing his Zanpakuto, but instead of dozens of blades, he's creating dozens of what look almost to be like eyes, like almost like reishi orbs, if you will. But they look like eyes, but they're more closer to like a reishi kind of spiritual weapon, like glowing blue, and maybe have like this dark pigment to represent pupil there. And what they do is they're lasers, they're reishi attacks to be precise, and they're designed to shoot multiple targets at once. They can convene on one target for a massive scatter shot. The immediate weakness, though, of this, and they themselves could, in theory, be used as a weapon, because they are made of spiritual energy, kind of like a Getsuka Tensho thing, where they're made of raw, floating spiritual energy. He could theoretically throw one of these as like a last-ditch effort, like as the final attack when he realizes that, okay, the standard attacks for my Shikai aren't working. Convene them all into one go by swiping a sword. Wherever he swipes the sword, they all convene on the one spot and blow up like a bomb. So, and then honestly, you can just reseal the blade, just okay, hit your mark again, and then more pop up. So actually, you could theoretically span that if you want to, but it's mostly designed for handling a lot of opponents at once. It'd be great for handling a massive amount of hollows, just kind of laser beaming them down, almost like heavy artillery fire, but with lasers. And this makes sense for someone who is a marksman, who's a gunslinger, who is also willing to fight a little dirty. His Bankai, though, basically convenes them all into one giant eye that's constantly behind him and constantly looking as a... And actually, I could even see it being that the Bankai actually has two eyes, but it's all on one part. What I mean by that is... So he's got this giant eye, and I mean, Cad Bane's... I don't know how big Cad Bane is, in terms of size. I think he's like 6 something. Let's say the Bankai eye is 20 feet tall overall. Big thing, all things considered. And so you have this eye in front of him. But if you were trying to get behind him in the eye, well, guess what? There's just another eye looking behind him. So he's actually protected on all fronts. Technically speaking, the only way to catch him off guard would to hypothetically come from the side, but that's what peripheral vision's for. And so not only can he probably see things through these eyes, each eye actually he can actually see through these eyes. And one eye is like his left eye, one eye, the back eye is his right eye or whatever. But really, obviously, the main ability of this eye would be an enhanced version of what the Shikai did, which would be to fire massive amounts of lasers, or a massive laser effect. Because these are only one eye, but they're now giant pupils which fire this giant cannon laser. And there'd be a twist on that as well, because obviously he's standing in the middle of this eye, technically speaking. Now, I imagine the eye would probably actually hover just above him, so it doesn't ever hit him. But in cases where he can probably move the eye if he needs to, with his mind or whatever, the eye could maybe sit behind him, and the pupil could morph. I think that would be a cool secondary ability of this thing, where the pupil, it's not just one giant eye beam. The pupil, for instance, let's say it is directly behind him. Well, the pupil just suddenly turns into the shape of a giant frowny face or something like that, or an arch right above him, and fires not a concentrated stream, but this arching, carving shape. It could turn maybe into a star, into a cat's eye kind of shape for this concentrated beam. He could focal dilate it down as far as it could to do this super high concentrated pressurized version. He could dilate it to an extreme mega degree, super dilated eyes. And just this giant massive cannon blast of an eyeball. He could have multiple pupils going on at once, just as he did before, except now they're bigger, larger, and have more Ryatsu behind them, so they're stronger now. He could also have them moving simultaneously at any given time. He could theoretically make any shape he wanted to with his, as long as he can think of it. So versatility, it's not a very complex ability in the sense of what it does. It still fires energy attacks. But in terms of how it fires them, what in theory it could do, well, that's actually very different. And you can actually do many things with that if you can think of what to do with the eye. Now, weaknesses of the Zanpakuto. As I said with the Shikai, and it's the same with the Bankai, this is not a physical Zanpakuto. It's not designed for melee combat, but it really doesn't need to be, especially with the Bankai. It's pretty capable. And by the way, the blade would be gone at this point, obviously. So yeah, the Shikai also is only so powerful. Like there's only so much you can overwhelm with pea-sized shot laser shots, even if you convene the attacks into one target. That's why it's got the secondary final ability of just kind of like throwing the bombs at someone. But again, Reishi to Reishi, that won't matter. Someone also who's a sharper shooter, like a Quincy, for example, would actually not be a good opponent for his Shikai. In fact, it might not even be a good opponent for his Bankai, because they are technically eyes. So they could theoretically still flinch. But more important to the point of the Shikai, just as it happened with Jirobo, he could blast all the eyes out of the sky in an instant. At least in the Shikai. The Bankai doesn't really have a clear weakness. Again, it's not physically based, and again, Shinigami battles, stronger Ryatsu will beat stronger Ryatsu, so that's a given. But in terms of style of the Bankai, or style of Zanpakuto, is there any clear-cut weakness to this? Someone like Ukitake Zanpakuto, his Kotowa Sonowa Kotowari, there we go. Asogi no wa Kotowari, which absorbs attacks and fires right back. That would actually be that would be a perfect counter to this. Anything that's absorbing energy or stealing energy would be a Yumachika Zanpakuto, Riro Jukoro. That would also be a perfect counter to this, because it probably would be a giant eye made of reishi is what it would be. Technically, like Tenken, Kokujo Tenken Yo's Bankai, with the giant massive being that's summoned, or Konjiki Akisogi Jizo, are still all reishi beings. They're still beings composed of spiritual pressure. So anything that absorbs that, or spiritual energy, I should say. So anything that absorbs that should be able to counter this eye. So energy absorption techniques are a particularly bad thing for this Zanpakuto. Again, stronger Ryatsus are a bad thing for the Zanpakuto. Attacks that redirect or absorb energy are a bad thing for the Zanpakuto. But it would be a pretty cool Zanpakuto, I think. And I think it works in tandem very well with this type of character. So, but this is just my opinion. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.